The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Maya Chen stepped into the gleaming lobby of Henderson and Associates. Her worn canvas tote bag clutched against her chest like a shield. The marble floors reflected the morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a moment she felt dizzy from the brightness, or maybe it was the fear. This was her 9th interview in 3 weeks. The previous 8 had all ended the same way: polite smiles that didn't reach the eyes, promises to be in touch, and then silence. Maya had learned to read the exact moment when an interviewer's expression shifted, when they noticed the fraying hem of her blazer or the scuffed shoes she'd polished 3 times that morning. That moment, when she transformed from promising candidate to not quite what we're looking for. She checked in at the reception desk, where a woman with perfect nails and a Chanel suit barely glanced up before pointing toward a row of leather chairs. Maya sat down carefully, conscious of every movement, every sound. Around her, other candidates waited with expensive briefcases and design watches that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. She pressed her palms against her skirt, willing them to stop sweating. Maya had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment that housed 6 people. Her parents had immigrated with nothing but hope and determination, working multiple jobs to keep food on the table. While her high school classmates worried about SAT prep courses, college tours, Maya had worked evening shifts at a convenience store, studied by the harsh fluorescent lights during slow hours, and taught herself coding from library books and free online resources. She'd earned a full scholarship to community college, then transferred to State University, graduating with honors while working 30 hours a week, but none of that seemed to matter. In interview after interview, she'd watch doors close when she couldn't name-drop the right connections or summer internships in Europe. She'd felt the judgment when she admitted she didn't have experience with certain software because she couldn't afford the subscription. Her portfolio was strong. She'd built apps and websites for local businesses in exchange for testimonials, but somehow it was never enough. Maya Chen, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a clipboard, appeared in the doorway. "We're ready for you." Maya followed her down a long corridor, lined with photographs of the company's history and achievements. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The woman, who introduced herself as Patricia from HR, made small talk about the weather, but Maya could barely focus. They stopped at a conference room where 3 people sat behind a long table, 2 men in expensive suits, and a woman who radiated the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove your worth. The interview began typically enough. They asked about her education, her experience, her technical skills. Maya answered honestly, her voice steadier than she felt. She walked them through projects she'd completed, problems she'd solved, innovation she'd implemented for small businesses that couldn't afford big tech solutions. Then came the question she'd been dreading. "I see some gaps in your resume," one of the men said, not unkindly, but with a hint of skepticism. "And your references are primarily from small, local businesses rather than established companies. Can you explain why you haven't pursued opportunities with more prominent organizations?" Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. This was the moment. The moment where she could either shrink or stand tall. "I pursued every opportunity I could find," she said quietly. "But many doors are closed before you even get to knock. When you don't have the right last name or the right zip code. I couldn't afford unpaid internships at prestigious companies because I needed to pay rent and help my family. I couldn't take courses on expensive software platforms, so I learned through free resources and taught myself by breaking down problems and rebuilding solutions from scratch. The businesses I worked with were small, yes, but their challenges were real. Their budgets were tight, and I had to be creative and efficient. I think that made me better at what I do." The silence that followed felt eternal. Maya watched their faces, trying to read which way this would go. The woman at the table exchanged a glance with one of the men, and Maya recognized that look. She'd seen it before. "This interview was over. Thank you for your time," the woman said, standing. "We'll be in touch." Maya nodded, gathered her bag, and walked out with as much dignity as she could muster. She'd made it halfway across the lobby when she heard a voice behind her. "Miss Chen." "Wait, please." She turned to find a man in his early 40s striding toward her. Unlike the others, his suit was slightly rumpled, his tie loosened, and his eyes held an intensity that made her straighten her spine. She recognized him from the photos in the hallway. James Henderson, the CEO and founder of the company. "I heard part of your interview," he said without preamble. "Come with me." Confused and wary, Maya followed him back through the building, but this time they headed in a different direction, toward the executive offices. Employees glanced up curiously as they passed. Henderson led her into a spacious corner office with windows overlooking the city, and gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Tell me something," he said, settling into his own chair and studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Why do you want to work here? The real reason." Maya hesitated, then decided she had nothing left to lose. Honestly, I need a job. I'm 2 months behind on rent, my student loans are crushing me, and my parents are getting older and still working 2 jobs each. But beyond that, she leaned forward, feeling a spark of the passion that had kept her going through countless rejections. I'm good at what I do. I'm really good. I can solve problems that others can't, because I've had to think differently my entire life. I've had to be resourceful and creative and persistent, because I've never had the luxury of taking the easy path. And I think this company could benefit from someone who understands that not every client or customer has unlimited resources, someone who can create elegant solutions that don't require massive budgets. Henderson listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I grew up in a trailer park in rural Montana, he said finally. My father left when I was 6, and my mother worked as a waitress. I wore the same pair of shoes for 2 years, even after they got too small because we couldn't afford new ones. I got into college on scholarship, worked as a janitor to pay for food, and started the company in a garage with money I borrowed from everyone who would listen to my pitch. He paused, his gaze never leaving hers. I built this company on the idea that talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. Somewhere along the way, as we grew and became successful, I think we forgot that. He stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. I sat in on part of your interview through the video feed, not because I was specifically monitoring it, but because I tried to observe our hiring process randomly to keep us honest. And I watched 3 people with expensive educations and comfortable lives dismiss someone with real talent because she didn't fit their image of what success looks like. Maya's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. Henderson turned back to her. Your answer about your experience, the honesty and the refusal to apologize for circumstances beyond your control that showed me more about your character than any polished answer ever could. I looked up your portfolio while you were walking out. Your work is exceptional. That app you built for the community center's food bank, that's more innovative than anything my team has produced in the last 6 months, and you did it for free. They needed it, Maya said simply. They were tracking everything on paper and volunteers kept making mistakes. People were going hungry because of administrative errors.
Exactly.
Henderson returned to his desk and pulled out his phone. I'm calling Patricia in HR. I'm creating a new position, reporting directly to me. You'll be our Director of Accessible Innovation. Your job will be to lead a team in developing solutions for clients and communities that have been underserved by the tech industry. You'll also work with me to overhaul our hiring practices and create internship and mentorship programs for talented people from non-traditional backgrounds. Maya stared at him, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? I'm offering you a job. The salary is competitive with director-level positions, full benefits, and I'm including a signing bonus to help you get caught up on rent and loans. But more than that, I'm offering you the opportunity to change not just your life, but to help change this company, and hopefully this industry. Tears burned behind Maya's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. Why? She whispered, why me? Why now? Henderson's expression softened. Because 25 years ago, someone gave me a chance when everyone else saw a poor kid with no connections and no pedigree. A woman named Margaret Santos hired me as a programmer when I had nothing but raw skill and determination. She saw my worth when no one else would. She passed away 2 years ago, and before she died, she told me to never forget where I came from. Lately, I have been forgetting, but watching you walk out of that interview, seeing the resignation on your face, resignation that I recognized because I'd worn it myself, once reminded me of what really matters. Extended his hand across the desk. So, Ms. Chen, what do you say? Are you ready to prove to this company and this industry that worth isn't measured by zip codes or bank accounts? Maya stood on shaky legs and gripped his hand. Yes, she said, her voice cracking slightly. Yes, I am. The next 6 months transformed Maya's life in ways she'd never imagined possible. The signing bonus allowed her to pay off her back rent and help her parents retire from one of their jobs each. She threw herself into her new role with fierce dedication, assembling a team of talented individuals from diverse backgrounds who'd also been overlooked by traditional tech companies. Together, they developed a suite of affordable software solutions for schools in low-income areas, healthcare clinics, serving immigrant communities, and small businesses struggling to compete in an increasingly digital marketplace. Maya's team worked differently than others at the company. They spent time in the community they served, understanding real needs rather than imposing solutions from above. The programs they created weren't just successful, they were revolutionary. An inventory management system for food banks reduced waste by 40%. An app connecting day laborers with employers in a safe, reliable way provided economic stability for thousands of workers. Educational software designed for students without home internet access bridged critical gaps in learning. But Maya's impact went beyond the products her team created. Working with Henderson, she completely reimagined the company's approach to recruitment. They partnered with community colleges and state universities, creating paid internships and apprenticeships. They eliminated degree requirements for positions where they weren't truly necessary, focusing instead on demonstrable skills and potential. They started hosting skills showcases in community centers across the city, where anyone could present their work and compete for positions based solely on merit. The changes didn't come without resistance. Some longtime employees grumbled about lowering standards. Some managers pushed back against hiring people who didn't fit traditional molds. But Henderson stood firm, with Maya at his side. And gradually, the culture began to shift. One afternoon, Maya was working late when Patricia from HR knocked on her office door. Behind her stood a young man, perhaps 19, with nervous eyes and clothes that had seen better days. "Maya, this is Marcus. He's here for the apprenticeship program interview tomorrow. But he's from 3 hours away. And his car broke down halfway here. He's been sleeping in his car. I thought maybe you could talk to him. Let him know the interview will still happen tomorrow, and we're putting him up in a hotel tonight." Maya looked at Marcus and saw herself reflected back: the fear, the desperation, the bone-deep exhaustion of trying to prove your worth when the world keeps telling you you're not enough. "Come in," she said gently. "Tell me about yourself." Marcus sat on the edge of the chair, his story tumbling out. He taught himself coding while working at a gas station, using the free Wi-Fi from the MC Donald's next door. He'd applied to 37 companies and received 37 rejections. He'd spent his last $200 on gas to get here, hoping this would be different. "It is different," Maya assured him. "You made it here. That persistence, that determination, that matters. Tell me about something you've built." His face lit up as he described an app he'd created to help his grandmother, who had early-stage dementia, remember her daily medications and appointments. It sent reminders, tracked whether she'd taken her pills, and alerted family members if she missed something important. He'd coded it himself, taught himself everything from online tutorials, and refined it based on his grandmother's feedback. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need here," Maya said. "Tomorrow, when you interview, I want you to talk about that app. Talk about why you built it, what problems you solved, how you tested it. Your story is your strength, Marcus. Don't hide it." He left with hope in his eyes, and Maya felt a profound sense of purpose. This was why Henderson had taken a chance on her, not just to help herself, but to help others like her, to change the system that had rejected them all. The following year, at the company's annual meeting, Henderson stood before hundreds of employees and stakeholders to discuss the impact of their new initiatives. Maya sat in the front row, watching as he presented the data. Revenue was up 30%, employee satisfaction had soared, client retention had improved dramatically, and they'd been recognized as one of the most innovative companies in the region. "But the numbers don't tell the real story," Henderson said, his voice carrying through the auditorium. "The real story is about the 67 people we've hired through our new programs who would have been overlooked by traditional recruiting. It's about the communities we've served who finally have access to technology designed for their actual needs. It's about the culture we've built where worth is measured by contribution, creativity, and character, not pedigree." He gestured to Maya. "A year ago, I watched a brilliant young woman walk out of an interview where she'd been dismissed for all the wrong reasons. I hired her because I recognized something in her that I'd once seen in myself: raw talent, unshakable determination, and a perspective forged by adversity that our comfortable industry desperately needed." Maya Chen has not only exceeded every expectation, but has fundamentally changed how this company operates and what we stand for. And she represents what's possible when we look for worth in places we've been ignoring. The applause was thunderous. Maya felt tears slip down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of gratitude, of vindication, of hope. After the meeting, as people congratulated her and shared their own story of rejection and redemption, Maya's phone rang. It was her mother. "We watched online," her mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father and we always knew you were special. We always knew you would do something important. I love you, Mom," Maya said. "Everything I am, I owe to you and Dad. You taught me that being poor doesn't mean being worthless. You showed me that dignity and worth come from within." That evening, Maya stood in her new apartment, a modest but comfortable space she'd earned through her own merit, and reflected on the journey that passed her worn clothes and humble